There's a question a friend raised a few days ago, and it's quite common that once you start becoming steady in your practice, the basic practice of virtue, sense restraint, and you're doing that for a good year or so, and things are maybe you've got a lot of energy for practice and contemplation, but then it just quietens out. There is no more questions in a way. You're not necessarily free. You're not free from suffering. You suffer, but you're now in a very comfortable zone. Yeah. Because you're not breaking any precepts. Yeah. You're comfortable in sense restraint. You're calm. Yeah. Well, that's basically then the time the Buddha says in the suttas when you have to kind of arouse energy for things that are not yet attained. Because, as we said so many times, precepts in themselves will not guarantee understanding. Precepts are necessary for understanding, but in themselves they will not lead to understanding if you don't make the effort to understand what needs to be understood. So although they are not optional in themselves, they are not sufficient. So if somebody has been, keep living according to the precepts, sense restraint and so on, great, but now you actually have to make the further effort. It's not like, what now? So that doesn't change. The lifestyle of precepts doesn't change, but on top of that, you have to start, arousing a bit of sense of urgency, reflecting about things you're liable, making a point out of it. And then, maybe perhaps if the environment is too familiar, too comfortable, to something you're very accustomed to, change it up a bit. Experience fatigue, elements, lack of sleep, and see how much of your steady practice remains and how much of it sort of starts to be challenged. Because you can also see that even the person's might be bothered by things being now too calm. Well, yes, and it's hard. It might be hard for somebody to kind of bring up that energy and determination to think about things not yet attained and things you're liable when nothing's directly sort of pressuring you, poking. Things have been calm relatively, your environment has been steadied, controlled, you live remotely, nothing coming up, it's fine, I'm content. But there is more to be done, obviously. So that's like when you want to just not necessarily destroy your house and leave and burn it and leave and just become a homeless person to experience the change, but just go somewhere for a while, somewhere different where you're not in control, where you might have to put up with such elements. That's when go to forest, go hiking, go stay away in a less comfortable environment. Go visit some family. Some relatives. I suppose, but I'm still trying to keep it along the practice of sense restraint. Go to people who would be challenging. Again, that's only if you cannot yourself sustain those reflections, there would be a rising sense of urgency and to practice towards things you haven't yet attained. Like if you can't, though, you just try and the mind just drifts away, then change it up a bit, or even within the setting that you have, don't eat for a day or two. Get up earlier than you would usually. Just to sort of, prod the lazy body and the mind, experience a bit of discomfort, and then you'll see, it's right there, things that I need to deal with. They're not abstract, they're not hidden in some distant parts of my reflection that I have to spend days of traveling before I arrive at what I need to do. Just a bit of lack of sleep, not enough food, a bit of fatigue, and see how much you remain mindful after all of that. Getting your views challenged? That too, exactly, sure, yeah. But then you need to find people who would challenge those views. I mean, relatives could, like people who are trying to be argumentative. Yeah, have your views challenged in a beneficial sense, not just in argumentative. Mind you, even then for somebody it might be enough to I guess, maybe I'm not clear as I thought I was. But to find people who would... in other words, it won't be that hard to find work to do internally. As long as you know that you need to find work to do. If you start looking, you will find it. If sometimes people don't think they should look, then they won't find it.
So one of the things is, once you've become calm like that and you can't see any work, the hindrances are kind of already coming up. There's some people who would say, well, now bring up the hindrances. Contemplate things that would make you lustful, so that you would get to deal with the lust. But then, so you would see, okay, now I am lustful. Okay, let me understand it now.
Yeah, I can see, like, the idea behind it is beneficial, but it would be overshooting the mark. So, like, if somebody doesn't, is not even aware that there is still lust, aversion in their mind and so on, if you tell them in a coarse manner, well, bring up the lust or aversion and that's your work, you could see practical benefit of it. However, you shouldn't really go all the way of bring up the lust or bring up the aversion. All you need to do is just think about that. If I think about such things, lust will arise, and stop there. That's enough. You don't need to actually excite yourself or wind yourself up in order to do it. Because just the prospect of being able to do it, and that prospect will become apparent as soon as you start thinking about doing it. If you start thinking about winding yourself up, you are already, if there is a possibility of you to be wound up, you are already being wound up just by that possibility. So you need to start recognizing that, because it will be much less efficient and you would waste much more effort than if you actually have to fully excite yourself towards sensual desire and then deal with it, or fully kind of wind yourself up with anger and aversion and then deal with it. There is no need to go all the way in, even on the level of the mind. But yes, if you're complacent, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, can lust arise in my mind? And already, you will have an answer. If I were to think such and such things, I will become lustful. That's it. You don't need to experience the lust to recognize that the lust is there. And same, if I recall things that were upsetting for me, and you start a little bit before, and you see, okay, I will get upset. Okay, stop there. That's enough. That recognition is sufficient. But that's why it's important to qualify where the line is, because if you don't qualify it, somebody can think that they must go all the way up until mind is wound up with anger in order to deal with it. And that's too far. Then you will not deal with it up until anger subsides first. Then you can deal with it. But if you know when to stop, such as, yes, think about something that makes you angry, and as you recognize that you're going to get angry if you continue thinking, stop. And so that's why you shouldn't arise hindrances, but you should definitely contemplate about liability to hindrances.
So if you say, well, I'm liable to getting angry, I'm liable to suffering on account of some loss.
Yes.
If
and I take the specific example then.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I lose somebody.
Yeah. Or you haven't lost, but start thinking about losing somebody immediately. Like, if you start going in that direction, if you are liable, you're going to start feeling it, and you don't have to now, okay, but I must go through all this whole kind of process of winding myself up, building up all this passion and aversion to deal with it. No. You are already sufficiently wound up. But so, on one hand, it's important to take something specific that could prompt lust or aversion or fear or anxiety in you. And the reason why it's important, actually, to have something specific is so you don't remain on that abstract plane of, yes, I am liable to loss. What is loss? Some people can operate in those categories mentally, but practically speaking, no. Find something that would affect you if you lose it. Think about it up until you start recognizing, okay, I'm going to get wound up. And that's when you practice, okay, so now I'll stop, and this is my work. The possibility of being wound up means I am already wound up. And that's what needs to be endured and seen on its own for what it is.
So you see the danger you're in, the possibilities of, and then you have to question yourself, why would I suffer if such and such happen? I lose my health. You can imagine something, losing your teeth or something.
Sure.
If that's
Well, you can explain why you would suffer physically,
Yeah.
but
No.
why would you mentally be distraught on account of such an idea? And another reason why it's important to not go all the way until and become completely wound up or lustful or angry is because then everything you do afterwards will be to get rid of the lust or anger, not to understand it, to get rid of the pain of it. But if you stop short of being wound up, face the direction of being possibility of being wound up, think about specific things that could wind you up, but before you get wound up, you stop. Then thinking about it will not be as rooted in trying to manage the pain and get rid of it, but it will actually be on the level of, okay, so I'm not quite wound up, but I could be wound up. And that's the middle ground where practice applies. I am liable to suffering, as the Buddha would say.
But you have to ask why. Why am I?
Well, if you're now on that level, then exactly. So why
does that exist?
Why would I be affected? You can start asking that, but really it's like, why would I be bothered if I'm affected? Why is that not acceptable to me?
Okay, so yeah.
If this occurs and there is the emotional response to it, why is that not? Why am I resisting the idea of that? Why am I defending myself against it, and so on?
Because right now that possibility is uncomfortable.
Exactly. So why am I then? Can I then not seek discomfort intentionally, but can I also not intentionally and habitually and automatically deny it and resist it and try to get rid of it? Can I just endure discomfort on that level of could be wound up but not wound up? Can I just stay there and endure it on that level without being wound up and then making all the effort to manage it and get rid of it and think I dealt with it? Can I just endure it on this level and learn how to stop resisting internally? Because that's how it weighs on you, through your resistance of it. You stop resisting it, it's just a thing that endures there. But that endurance, as I say so many times, needs to be endured on the right level, which is the level of that I am about to be wound up, or I could be wound up and experience aversion, lust and so on, but I'm not quite, so I'm stopping. In other words, I'm restraining my thinking and senses and not engaging further, but at the same time I'm not denying the direction of where my mind's heading. So can I endure things on that level, on that more ambiguous level, on that level that's much easier to doubt and overwhelm you? Because if you're not lustful, then you're lustful, then you apply the practice to get rid of the lust. Done. Clear cut. Simple. A, B, C. You're not angry, then you're angry, then you do this when you're angry. Simple. A, B, C. But none of that is where the Dhamma is. You don't want to be managing those states of mind because they're painful. You want to be not resisting their pain so that they don't affect you to begin with.
So the possibility that I could suffer is suffering.
Yeah.
No, it's felt.
That's already uncomfortable. If you discern it, that will be felt uncomfortably.
So now I don't have to go wind myself up.
That's it. It's already there.
Yeah.
But I need something more palpable. No, that's your problem. That's the lack of discernment and lack of mind development. When you think you need something more palpable, and the only reason you need something more palpable is because you keep seeking something more palpable.
Yeah, what is palpable is right in front of you.
Yeah, because this is palpable enough, sufficiently palpable. You recognize it, you discern it, you see it. But that ambiguity in itself, it's uncomfortable. So by seeking something more palpable, what you're in reality doing is trying to get rid of discomfort of something more doubtful, less palpable, less clear, less definable. And that's already a form of craving. Because I said, even ambiguous state of mind mind affected with doubt, for example, it's real as such. It's not clear, lack of clarity, confusion, it's this, so this. That experience as a whole is real as such, and that cannot be doubted. But you need to endure it sufficiently on that level of that doubt and ambiguity to recognize it on its own. Because now, whenever such experience manifests, when you are sort of experiencing it, the habitual action is go towards definition, clarity, answers, not because you recognize the value of the answer, but because through answering or through seeking the answer, you get rid of the pain of the discomfort of the doubt.
Yeah. So I'm comfortable in my practice, but I want to practice. I do want to practice.
Yeah.
So
So what do you do? What
you
it
go
is.
and seek practice,
Exactly.
and then why try to wind myself up or try to study or get some thoughts going?
Yeah.
But that's all because I'm actually stepping away from practice.
But I think I said in other talks, like if sometimes a person reaches that a bit of a kind of status quo, like, oh, it's all right, but I don't see any further what to do. Just tighten your sense restraint. Just start saying no a bit more to more things, and you'll see immediately the mind, very short, it won't be before long. Mind starts, coming up with irrational things and mind states and moods and so on, and there's your practice. Now deal with that. Go and stay in the forest. Go hike. Skip a meal. Do something like they will disturb that wholesome routine, but will tighten the pressure a bit. And if nothing comes up, great. Tighten it a bit more. Nothing comes up, well, maybe you really finished all the work. But I'm pretty sure things will come up as soon as you start tightening.
Yeah, as you say, skip a meal. You don't have to go.
Because when we speak often about knowing your intentions, you realize, yes, you keep the precepts, you live a wholesome life, date from the morning till the evening. But within that, if you look at your intentions closely, there will be things you do out of distraction. Again, not kind of seriously unwholesome sensual desire or ill will and anger, but now we're looking for a more refined things, refined blemishes, and there will be things you do out of desire, out of irritation, out of distraction, not on that big scale as I said, but still in its own, it's still the same phenomenon of desire, of ill will, and that's your work. So restrain that then. That's all, restrained by the body, speech, and then the mind. Thoughts, intentions, actions by your mind. You start restraining that in the same sense you're restraining physical actions of, doing things with the body and saying things with the mouth.
Yeah, fear that you haven't got it all worked out. So then everything's calm, but you can have this fear of, I need to have it all worked out, my ideas. And
that's again, it would be rooted in that same thing, exactly that thing I said. I need to have things worked out, because things not worked out is too ambiguous and uncomfortable to me. Thus, I want to manage that phenomenon, that discomfort.
How can you be sure that you won't disintegrate? How would I know now that I won't suffer in the future if all that happens?
Well, as we said in the beginning, come up with specific things that used to make you suffer, that are making you suffer. If that doesn't work, increase the sense restraint. Just see what mind will do. It's going to start kicking and screaming because you tighten its harness. Then be patient. Don't slide back, as in don't go back to sensuality and so on. And you wouldn't, if nothing is prompting you, you wouldn't have a reason to go back. And then be patient for a while and see if something comes up unforeseen. Keeping the precepts of practicing sense. That's why arahants, even themselves, remain mindful and sense restrained, because they prefer now that. And that's why often you had even anagamis who thought they were arahants. They couldn't see anything else to be done. Factually, they couldn't see anything else to be done. But as the Buddha said, there might have been some subtle, almost like virtually invisible residues.
So they remain alert.
But they remain alert, exactly. So you have nothing to lose either way. If you remain alert, sense restraint, keeping the precepts. And it's also preferred mode of being.
There's no end to that, yeah. That's once you take up that practice, that's it.
So if none of those things brings up any issues or kilesas or stuff to deal with, fine. Now you have completed your work, as the Buddha would say, and you would just continue abiding mindful and sense restraint, because that's a pleasant mode of being alive. More or less unpleasant mode of being alive. Less unpleasant mode of enduring the body and the five aggregates until they break apart.